everyone. All right, welcome back. Today's video is going to be about my recent experience microdosing psilocybin mushrooms. I'm going to talk about why I did it, what it was like, what I learned, and also why I stopped. I've had plenty of experiences with mushrooms, with LSD, different psychedelics, ketamine, MDMA, etc., etc. And I had experiences microdosing ketamine via nasal spray, but I'd never really tried microdosing mushrooms, not officially, right? I had nibbled on mushrooms for a week and seen what that was like, but I'd never had, the capsules and done it really measured out and on a schedule and really investigated it. And so this was my first time doing that. But I was not new to psychedelics. So why I decided to do it was two reasons. I think there was a part of me that wanted to have another medicine session, like a deep 5-6 gram mushroom session with my guide, but I couldn't really afford it quite yet. I'm still actually saving up for that. And so a part of me felt like, well, maybe I can try microdosing. It's a much lower cost. And it's also not something that I should feel, right? It's something that'll be subtle. It's something that should just kind of benefit me in the background. Really, the main reason was just that I wanted to experiment with it and see what it would be like. Going into it, I thought maybe I'm going to discover that microdosing mushrooms just regularly, maybe for the rest of my life, is something that will, make a huge impact on my relationships and on my creativity and etc., etc. The decision to experiment was less so from a need and more so from a let's see if I can make my life even better. So the logistics of my microdosing experience, I did it for between 40 and 50 days. The reason it's not an exact count is because towards the end of it, I took a week-long trip. So obviously I had to take that time off. And so once I came back, I just was in a very weird headspace, and there was a part of me that didn't want to continue to do it, but I just had a little bit left over. So I skipped a couple of the days where I was supposed to take it, and then I took a little bit more on the last day, and consistently for about 30 to 35 days, and then the last 10 to 15 days I was less consistent with it. But I'm gonna put up a little image right here with my microdose schedule. And so there was a process of trial and error in the first few days where I didn't know how much to take. And you can read about it and you can try to kind of discern, all right, this is what experts recommend, but it's always going to be different, and it's going to depend on your body type, your metabolism, your height, your weight, etc., your experience with psychedelics. So I decided to just start out with 0.1 and then increase 0.1 every day until I felt the psychoactive effects, so that when I felt them, I could tone it back 1 gram and then be right at the edge of it where I'm not feeling the mushroom high, but I am taking enough that I know it's not just that it's making a dent. And again, I don't know that is the professional way to do it. I know that the recommendation is that you're not feeling any psychoactive effects, and that's why it's a micro dose, so that a lot of it just happens in the background. But yeah, so my way of gauging what the right dose for me was where I'm not feeling the psychoactive effects. And once I figured out the right dose, I decided to take it 1 day, 2 days off, and then on the 4th day take it, 2 days off, and then on the 7th day take it. And so that's what I did. So what the experience was like, once I got the right dose, and because there's taking it for 30 to 50 days, of course there's going to be days where it's different, or my mood is different that day and maybe it affects me more. There's a lot of variables here. So when I say my experience, I'm talking just broadly, but know that there are days where I didn't feel anything at all, and then there's days where while I was figuring out the dose, I took 0.4 and it was like, whoa. But once I got the dose right, there was no trippy effects, there was no visuals, nothing like that. That's not the point of this, at least not for me. The point of it all for me was to connect more to myself and to my emotions. And on the days where I didn't take it, I honestly can't say that I noticed much of a difference. On the days where I did take it, what I noticed was that, and this might have been just, I would take it on a day where I'm working. And so it might have been less so the effect of it and more so this, I don't know if it's placebo, but just this idea in my head that like, oh, I just took zero point 0.3 grams of mushrooms and I'm working today. And so my mind starts to kind of get a little bit worried or just become a little bit more hyper aware of, am I feeling anything? And all of a sudden I feel my chest and my breathing a little bit heavier. But so on the days where I did take it, I also noticed that I felt more emotional. Like there was one day where I went out for a walk, and as soon as I got to the trail, there's nobody on the trail, and as soon as I got to the trail, I was just, because of things that are happening in my life too, I started to feel the emotion behind those things, which I'm already, it's not that I have a difficulty doing that. I schedule time to grieve and to feel sadness and all of these things. But I do that maybe once or twice a week. And when I was taking the microdose, I would just kind of be hit by it, right? Where it's like, I didn't plan for this, it's just coming. And so on that walk, I just started crying on the trail. Not so much sadness, but just this, what it was for me in that moment was this feeling of, I was walking my brother's dog and it was morning time and it was just a beautiful day. And I was thinking about how lucky I am that I get to have that experience, and also how I wish that my dad could be here and have that experience with me. He's not dead or anything like that. He does have a potentially terminal illness, but he just can't travel right now. And so the fact that he might be gone soon was like, man, I am going to really be sad and I'm going to miss the opportunity of him to be here. It's just, I don't know, this very, not existential, but just like gratitude and presence in the moment and in the beauty, instead of just going for the walk and being on default, which is not that I do that, but that I feel like can be a default for a lot of people. Now, before I started microdosing, I was coming off of, a few months, 4 months of being like truly and deeply at peace with myself, and just at a baseline of like happiness, joy, and giving myself permission to feel sadness often. And so probably the most regulated that I've ever felt in my life for those 4 to 5 months. And as I started microdosing, I noticed my system started to become deregulated. Things felt more chaotic. And I don't mean like in the extreme sense. I just mean like I had gotten used to being in love with being sober. And then all of a sudden, in those first couple of weeks when I was figuring out the dose, maybe I took a little bit too much. And all of a sudden I'm having this 5% psychedelic experience. And I'm like, whoa, I don't like this, right? Because I don't enjoy being high, at least not anymore, or at least I haven't yet since I decided to not do these things for fun anymore. And I do enjoy being sober, like a lot. I really enjoy the feeling that I have of just like being oriented, properly oriented in the world. And so getting hit with these sort of random moments of like slight paranoia or overwhelming sadness, right, that I didn't anticipate or that I didn't prepare, and that maybe I wasn't in the right space to feel. So at first I was excited, right, because I didn't know what to expect. And then the farther I got into the schedule, the more I was just like, man, I just fucking want this to be over with. Because, and this is just probably just a story that I'm telling myself, but that story that I'm telling myself at this moment is that the microdosing was this like unpredictable variable that I added into something that was working already, right? And so I didn't need to do this. Again, I chose to do this just to see what it would be like. And what I found was I didn't need to do this, and I actually I prefer to just where I was before. And this is not just my recollection. This is also, I journal every single day. and I journaled about how I was feeling as these days went on. And I noticed it started from, it went from my initial, like, I am feeling joy, and then I gave myself permission to grieve, and then had a lot of fun and did this exciting thing, to, like, I became more judgmental of myself, and just there were more days where I was like sad or frustrated or anxious or having a hard time going to sleep. And so what used to be this baseline of peace became like a zigzag of just joy, sad, extreme sadness, paralyzing anxiety, poor sleep, and just my days became much more unpredictable. And I am totally open to the idea that there's an argument to be made that maybe those are things that had to come up and that I had to feel. And that's something that I'm still exploring. But at this moment, what it feels like to me is like I had found a stability, and I just randomly did something that messed with the flow of where I was in my life. So why I stopped is exactly what I just mentioned. This was an experiment, and before the experiment was even over, I realized how much I value the sober state of mind that I have worked really hard to get comfortable at being in. And microdosing, at least the way that I did it, started to fuck with that. And there's also just this part of me that for some reason doesn't feel quite comfortable with the idea of taking something, taking a pill, taking this medication. I know that this is a natural substance, and I'm not comparing it to, opiates or anything like that, but I guess because I used to smoke marijuana so regularly, and it felt like something that I needed, and even when I did the ketamine nasal spray, the idea of having to ingest something in order to reach a potential new layer of joy or whatever, or in order to just be okay with being with myself, it doesn't feel right to me, especially after I've been able to just be sober and just be myself and be at peace with that. I just don't like the idea of this dependency. And I know people might not want to call it that. People might say that they're, oh, well, I'm choosing to microdose. And it's like, yeah, well, all right. But for me, the question is, can I find what microdosing might give to other people in myself? Can I be the bearer of those gifts instead of depending on a substance to give them to me? And last but not least is that I do highly prefer those once in every 4 or 5, maybe 6 month sessions that I go way deeper and that I am doing with a guide that is there taking care of me, instead of this, random just solo experiment. Because I just find that it's not, there's not as clear of a message, there's not as clear of a lesson when I'm doing the microdosing. And I'm sure that that's just a function of, the dosing and all that, but I do prefer going in and doing a MDMA and 5 gram on top mushroom experience where I can really get deep into trauma and all this shit that's stuck in my body. And then for 2, 3, 4 months after that, I can integrate what I learned and what I experienced, and then start to prepare for a potential second, third, or fourth, or wherever I'm at session. So anyway, I wanted to end this video by saying that it was weirdly difficult for me to find information on microdosing, but I wanted to make this video just because, again, more than like this being some groundbreaking thing where like, oh man, it was changed my life, it was just kind of whatever. I just didn't know that that was an option. I didn't know that that was a potential outcome of microdosing, that it might just not really do that much, or that it could even, like it did in my case, slightly start to alter in a negative way with my life. So hopefully this serves you in some way. Maybe it provides you with the information that I wish I had when I started. But anyway, thanks for stopping by. I hope you have a wonderful week, and I will see you next time.